Those we love never truly leave us. There are things that even death cannot touch. How beautifully put by British playwright Jack Thorpe. It is quite the love, adulation, and admiration for eminent jurist Fali Sam Nariman that brings us all together today. To some of us, he was Bhishma Pitama, to some, a paragon of excellence, and to some, Uncle Fali. BW Legal World is deeply privileged to welcome our esteemed guests and each one of you joining us online as we gather to pay tribute to the remarkable legacy of Mr. Fali S. Nariman. With us today on the panel are Mr. Anup Bose, Advocate Supreme Court of India, Dr. Shashmit Patra, Advocate and Member of Parliament Rajya Sabha, Dr. Manoj Kumar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Law and Justice, Government of India, Mr. Sridhar Pottaraju, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, Ms. Nandini Gore, Senior Partner, Karanjawala & Co., and Mr. Sudhir Mishra, Managing Partner, Trust Legal. They all have many cherished interactions and anecdotes to share, ensuring that legal legend Mr. Nariman's story continues to inspire generations to come. Our heartfelt appreciation goes out to all of you for being a part of this live tribute today. I now invite Mr. Sudhir Mishra to share his thoughts and steer us through this hour of remembrance.
Thank you, Ashima, for pulling this together at such a short notice. And this is very, very deep, actually. And everybody who is here, most of them have a very personal connect with Fali sir. I would say that 9 days before he went, we did a video with him for a Vidhi Utsav, which he was so excited about. And I had put it on LinkedIn 4 days back after his permission. And he was supposed to come. And he was so excited that somebody thought that like a Jaipur Lit Fest or a Rekhta legal fraternity can have its own celebration. And he was very excited about it. He did a video, we put it there. And we were looking forward to have his inaugural session that day. And my thoughts are still completely, I'm still in the same state that I can't relate to the fact that we have to do that function. And a lot of things have happened in the last many years, but his book was something, You Must Know Your Constitution. It moved me, the introduction where he talked about for the first time about his son and how he is one of the best in that entire family. And I have been hearing about him from Anup Bose sir, whom I met in 99. What was the legacy of Ashok Sen, Fali Nariman sir, Palkiwala. And that's why I really wanted Anup Bose sir to be part of this panel discussion. He, in fact, wrote an article in Sunday Guardian today, which everybody is talking about, the kind of tribute he has done because Fali sir had participated in his wedding. He was always there. He was briefing him. He was informally attached to him. And same is with Nandini ma'am and Dr. Manoj. I have heard from other people that when he was practicing and running a firm, how much he would have interacted with him. My very close friend Sridhar Pottaraju, who has been in Supreme Court for 25 years and have seen him from close. And of course, a very rare insight as a parliamentarian, which he had a very distinguished inning. And today, Abhishek Singhvi has written in Times of India that everybody was quite surprised that a person of his straightforwardness, how did he even get into Rajya Sabha? Because he was supposed to be a person calling a spade a spade. So we have a very distinguished panel today, and I'm very blessed. We will start with Nandini ma'am, actually. That you tell your journey. What was like meeting him for the first time, and what was like knowing him? What was his daily routine? What he used to eat? What was his music? What was his life? Let's celebrate his life.
Thank you so much. So I joined this profession in the year 1992, and I started my journey with Mr. Adarsh Goel. I used to go and brief him in a lot of matters, and he was the one who told me, why don't you go and meet Ryan Karanjawala and Mani Karanjawala? So I said, okay, sir, I'll go and meet them. And I think he called Manik ma'am and he said, check this girl. Check this girl. Later on, she told me. So, and then I joined this office and they used to send me for briefing. And I was very new in the profession and my child was also very small at that time. So one day, Mrs. Karanjawala and Mr. Karanjawala, they told me, you go and show these documents to him. There is a matter where the conference is there and people are coming from Bombay. So because I had just that paper with me. I read the paper and then I went to the office. I read the file and I went there and I said, "Sir, Mr. Karanjawala has given this paper to give it to you." "Paper to give it to me? Young lady, introduce yourself first." So I told him, "Sir, this is my name. Now tell me, what is this paper about?" Now I started telling him the story. This, sir, this is regarding that rent control matter which has come from Bombay. Mr. Darayas Khambata has to come. And he said, "Okay, tell me about this provisions of CPC." And I had no clue. "You're a lawyer or a clerk?" My God. And I started crying there. And that day was the day, whenever I used to go for a conference, I used to read the paper book from page one to page last. And I was always ready. And after 15 days, he met my late husband in a party where he called him and he said, "You know, your wife is the best advocate on record." So
Wow.
that day I could not sleep because it took me 10 to 15 days to reach as per his expectations. And there are so many stories. He used to call us for conferences in the morning at 7:38. Nowadays, if you tell people to go in the morning, they'll say, "Ma'am, we get up at this time, we go for a walk, we go to the gym." But he was so particular. Mr. Bose must be knowing, at the back side of his house there is a garden, and he used to sit there in the chair. And 7:30, if I reach there at 7:30, Subhash used to tell me that he's waiting for you guys 7:15. 15 minutes before he'll be there on his chair. Then another good thing about him, I had so many memories for him. So like, if you were there, "So you had your breakfast?" He used to have fruits, fresh fruit salad cut, and then he's going to have that in the morning. He used to offer that to us. Then many times the conference were supposed to be in the evening. So from his kitchen, we used to get cake, pastries, tea. And if you're not having, and if you're showing that you're working with, इसको खाने का है, खाने का, देखने का नहीं है. You don't have to look at it. You have to eat it. Eat it. Eat it. 3 times he'll say that. Then there was another, it's not a story, it's like a teaching. So what happened, there was a new girl in our office, and I took her for the conference with me. That time, Bepsi auntie used to do gardening downstairs, and from there, there's a staircase where there is an office upstairs. So we all had a habit that we used to greet auntie. "Hello, auntie, how are you? Good evening, good morning, whatever." She was a new girl, and we went up. So he asked her, "What's your name?" He said, "You should know this, that you can greet people. That gives smile on their face. Next time when you come, greet auntie." And she later on asked me, "Is she that important?" I said, "Yes, she is his life. You have to greet her. And it doesn't make any difference. These are very small, small things. So these are the things with which we have grown up. And now with my 25, I think 28 years in the profession, every day is a new day. You learn so many things. Once he told me, when you're in the court, don't ever irritate the judge. Don't ever irritate the judge. If you feel that you are right, you argue, you prepare your case like this, that he is happy with you, but don't irritate him. Then there is another story which I remember. He used to encourage us to argue the matters, and there was one matter of Bombay dying where we were supposed to mention the matter and take some order. And that day he told me, "You go and you mention, I am standing outside. If something goes wrong, take my name and tell them I'm coming." And he was standing outside Chief Court. He told me to mention the matter. I got a stay, and when I came out, "What happened?" So I said, "Sir, I got a stay." "Very good. Keep it on." So these are very small, small things. I can go on and on. I think
Yeah,
I'll
good,
store
good
some
initial.
stories for the
Thank,
rest of the
Yeah,
program.
yeah,
thank
sure.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Ms. Gore. It's so wonderful to hear about his profession and personal, things and such enriching stories. I will now go to Dr. Kumar. Dr. Kumar, Mr. Nariman called the bar the school of hard knocks in his book. So he really talks about how he values discipline and also the chambers that he belonged to. Sir Jamshedji Kanga was, in 1951 was where he started out. Now, over the years, he's given 75 years to the profession. What has been your experience working with him, and what are the learnings that you take from him?
Well, it has been a long journey, much shorter than, of course, his own journey. But as a young lawyer in the early 90s, I remember, just like Nandini was mentioning, having to navigate my way through to his office, for work. And the kind of perception that people usually carried about Fali in those days of being a very strict and a disciplinarian and a perfectionist. Uh, Gradually, he helped me, comfort it down, and I got multiple occasions after that to work with him as well as my team at the firm. Uh, I think one thing I owe to him as an individual, as a professional that I've evolved in the last 30 years, is the importance of being a perfectionist. He would not accept anything less than what it should be as perfect. The tireless efforts, the tireless revisions on preparation, going on and on and on and on till we actually make that one short appearance before the judge. He had his way around, with his perfect sense of humor, his wit, and the way he would comfort us all and not let us, or at least try to ensure that we don't take the pressure, but keep driving us to perfection, working on the document, working on pleadings when we are going for pre-approvals. There have been multiple occasions where, because of his own standards of, that he has set on ethics and how he would always be on the right side of things, we have had managements and promoters before taking any big decisions. Uh, in addition to any other advisory they would take from the big four and the many others who have very unique skills. One of the places where they would want some of their initiatives to be passed through as a screening, and many occasions we have piloted it ourselves, was through the eyes of Fali, especially when it related to areas where it could be gray and open for judicial intervention, or a little open on questions where which are in the unregulated space, or which could be questionable on any principles, completely knowing that he would only say what is right,
Mm.
and then relying on his advice. So, when he has left a hallmark, which is, uh, I think for us, it's the more we take it as an inspiration through the generations. His writings are there, on, if I recall properly, before the memory fades. Uh,
Yeah.
Great interest. I got the opportunity to read and also have a copy signed by him. Uh, I think he has left a legacy that is very difficult to, summarize in a few minutes or even a few hours or a few days. But we should all be, carrying the legacy and of course continue in his footsteps as a fraternity and as a profession. I could add more and go on, but I
Yeah.
think come back in a short while. Yeah.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Over to you,
and
Mr. Mishra.
Yeah, wonderfully said, Dr. Manoj. And I'd like to come with a different perspective now because, as a lawyer, his journey is being recounted. And I've heard so much about, and will in fact go back to Sridhar and Nandini again on that issue, how hard taskmaster he was, because and how he managed to get that task done. And he was himself very hard on his own craft, actually. But to bring it, the is another dimension of his personality of being a parliamentarian and what was his reason to be in the parliament. He has said it many times that when it came to his son's appointment in the Supreme Court, people asked him, "What did you feel?" He said, you are called on to do a duty, a national duty, you do that duty." That was his view. So, Dr. Patra, what was your idea about him? You are another lawyer who is also a parliamentarian, and you saw him in Rajya Sabha, and he had a very forceful tenure in Rajya Sabha. How do you see him as a parliamentarian? What was his contribution? And what have you learned from him?
Thank you so much, Sudhirji, for giving this opportunity. Actually, there are 4 or 5 very quick facets I'd like to mention. One is he was never appointed to the Rajya Sabha through a political route, and that is something we need to appreciate. He was nominated by the President of India, and he took office from 1999 to 2005. So many a times you have parliamentarians who are there who come from the judicial side and who are sponsored by a political party. And when a judicial member sponsored by a political party comes, of course, people look at you from a certain prism. But I think what sets Fali Narimanji so differently is that the Honorable President of India thought it fit that such a man should be there in the upper house of Parliament to be able to bring about legislation and talk about. I think that is a feather on the cap of any individual who wants to come into Rajya Sabha nominated. That is one. Second, in terms of the kind of work that he has done, has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, time will be very short if I were to just talk about a few things. I would like to talk about 2 calling attention motions where he had participated. And the subjects of those calling attention motions in the parliament is very crucial. One is grave situation due to unprecedented rain in Maharashtra. We all know he started from Bombay. And somewhere probably Maharashtra stayed very close in his heart. And therefore, when you go through the records of the parliament, when you see the kind of interventions that he's done, so one of the calling attention motions where he has participated has been the floods that happened in Maharashtra on 3rd August 2005. And on 2nd August 2005, he again participated in our calling attention, which was situation arising out of recent hike in petrol and diesel prices. So many a times when we look at Fali Nariman, we look at him from a perspective of a jurist. But here is a man who was connected with the people's issues as well. I think that's something which is so brilliant and beautiful about it. Now, if you were to look at another perspective, and please stop me whenever you feel like, because there's so much of stuff that is there, is he discussed and debated about the suspension of question hour in the parliament to discuss clashes between police and workers of Honda Motorcycles and Scooters India in Gurgaon on 26 July 2005. So on one hand, you have floods that he's concerned about. On one hand, he's worried about rising fuel prices. Other hand, he's worrying about industrial unrest. And he again further, and the number of things that he's gone into, I'm quickly trying to bring you to specific. For example, on matters raised with permission, which in the Rajya Sabha is known as the 0 hour. In the 0 hour, you can raise specific matters raised with permission. And on 21st March 2005, in the Rajya Sabha, he raised a major issue, termination of services of a physically challenged scientist by IIT Delhi. So
Wow.
the vastness, or for that matter, on 10th March 2005, he spoke again on a 0 hours matter raised with permission, recent ruling by the Supreme Court allegedly affecting the functioning of the legislature of a state. The federal structure comes in. So if you see in
Wow.
just 5 small pieces, how diverse has been his contribution to parliament. So usually you would think someone from the law fraternity would talk about law and justice, would talk about legislation. But here is a man who's thinking about the Aam Aadmi. He's thinking about the normal guy, his bread and butter, the fuel prices increasing, industrial unrest, trade unionism, a termination of a physically challenged person in IIT Delhi, no less. And then, federalism and how federalism is affected by Supreme Court. So then his report on ethics, etc. It's tons of work. I just really wish, so these sometimes we should collate all the work that is done as a parliamentarian,
Yeah.
because we look at it from one
Yeah.
prism, But look at the diversity. In just 5 minutes, I've given you five perspectives that is added to
Absolutely.
Parliament.
Absolutely, Dr. Patra. I think you
To-
painted quite a picture
Totally
of
agree
him.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go
You,
ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
absolutely. And what a conscience keeper of the country and the courts and the society. So thank you, Dr. Patra, for sharing those insights with us. Also bringing in Mr. Sridhar now. Mr. Sridhar, we know that in his book, in fact, Mr. Nariman makes a distinct division between advocacy and lawyering. He says lawyering is about knowing your case laws and relevant law. Advocacy is about knowing your facts and then applying it to the law that you know, and not the other way around. So what has been your experience working with him in the courtroom? How did he go about his lawyering and advocacy?
His to speak about the learned senior counsel Fali Nariman is a great honor and a privilege, and the fact that he's no longer around is a very sad moment for all of us. It is I've come to the profession and then to the Supreme Court in late 90s, and it was a fanboy moment to actually see them walk in the corridors where we were there physically. And to see him in the court, these are all dreams coming true. And one thing which stands out of Mr. Fali Nariman in the court is the ease at which he keeps the court, the calmness he brings to any kind of a matter, and then the simplicity in his presentation. That's one striking feature of his presentation. He doesn't raise his temper unnecessarily. He doesn't show much of an emotion. Of course, in the flow, sometimes the variations do happen, but his court craft was something which is phenomenal, and it stands out for the simple reason that he used to use the tone of his presentation as a tool by itself. When he would like to say something, when he would like to just duck something, he would just mumble and then move on very subtly. That's craft at its best. And then and highlight a point in a manner that probably the weakling in the argument is like blushed aside. And the presentation skills were phenomenal in the sense that he would try to draw the attention of the judges and the people who are listening, because everyone who's in the court hall is actually, in a way, looking up to a legend presenting a facts or the case in a manner which is very uniquely his own, bringing the essence of the case factually and then actually intertwining it in a beautiful way to show the constitutional philosophy which ensures that the citizens personal facts are actually as if they've been thought through by the framers of the constitution through the language used in the document of the constitution. It's an amazing skill and craft that he brings into table. Other than that, what I would say is that walking in the same corridors or sharing the space in the lunchroom, there's a very tiny lunchroom in the Supreme Court, which is very unique. In fact, I hear from friends from the other chamber, the other legion from our bar, Mr. Soli Sorabji, who would refer to that as Fali's lunchroom or Fali's room. So because that's the kind of identity. Even I thought for many years that that's probably a privileged space only meant for a few select seniors. That kind of a thing. But that place is where anyone who's wanting to have a lunch could just walk in, sit and eat. And that was the greatest simplicity of this man. When you think of big lawyers, we talk in terms of sharks and whales. But this is a man who is so very grounded, like a saint. The simplicity that he brought to the corridors, he would actually quite walk past you and you wouldn't even notice the buzz, the juniors around him, or creating a buzz. It's nothing. It's very unlike someone probably from a glitzy city like Bombay. I would say it at the peril of probably annoying a few from there, but that simplicity he brings in is a quite a South Indian simplicity that I could see in him. I think that's what I think.
How wonderful to hear that, Mr. Sridhar, and how many lives he has touched for sure. Mr. Mishra, back to you.
Yeah, now Dr. Patra is also here, and this is the blockbuster part now, which starts with a person who wants to speak deeply, Anubose, And I know Mr. Bose for almost now 27 years. And when I got married, one of the first stories I used to hear when I met him in 99, 2000 was about Ashok Sen with whom he worked and about Fali sir with whom he lived all his life. And what an article he has written, I'll share with everybody who has not seen that article. And there'll be many follow-up articles which will write. But Anubho sir, we want to hear from you everything, right from your observation as a child, whatever you can recollect about his association with you deeply, what you used to do in your conferences with him, how he used to allow you to go to his kitchen and access to the goodies directly, and also about his participating in your wedding and telling everybody that how the Bengalis need to be fed to that hotel management person. All the interesting stuff we want to know. And of course, what was his law? What was his practice? And why do you say and feel that he was the last of the legend?
Thank you very much, Sudhir, for your warm auditory introduction, and also your comments on my long association with Fali Sam Nariman, whom I affectionately used to call Uncle Fali. I naturally opened my eulogy with the immortal words of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru: "The light has gone out from our lives, and there is darkness everywhere." And here we are all gathered in cyberspace to pay our humble homage, our respectful homage, to whom I consider as the last of the greats and the last leader of the Indian bar. Going back to my own senior and guru, Mr. Ashok Sen, who was the law minister in Nehru's cabinet and Lal Bahadur Shastri's cabinet, and many, many years later, the law minister in Rajiv Gandhi's cabinet. And I once asked him, and I used to call him Ashok Mamu. He was not only a father figure, but he was my guru, my teacher, my senior in the profession, and also my mentor. I said, Ashok Mamu, you are the undisputed leader of the Indian bar. Who is going to be the leader of the Indian bar after you? And with a wave of his hand, he said, Fali. And somebody asked him after him, but after Fali, whom is it after Fali? There will be no other leader of the Indian bar. My association with Uncle Fali goes back to the year 1967. In the year 1966, Ashok Sen was no longer the law minister of India because Mrs. Indira Gandhi became the prime minister, and she brought in Gopal Sarup Pathak as the law minister. And Lal Bahadur Shastri died on the 11th of January 1966, and Indiraji was sworn in on the 24th of January 1966. And on the 25th of January itself, Ashok Sen went back to the Supreme Court, put on his gown, and started practicing again. During those days, Uncle Fali used to visit Delhi intermittently. He was not a frequent visitor. But by the year 1967, Uncle Fali had made his impact in the Supreme Court. And so therefore, I met him for the first time in 1967 when he used to come to my senior's residence. In those days, he used to live in number 9 Raisina Road. And upon that plot, we now have this Meridian Hotel, you see, that is where Ashok Sen used to live. And then he subsequently moved to number 19 Teen Murti Lane, you see. And more than my senior, who was very, very fond of Uncle Fali, his own father-in-law, Chief Justice Sudhiranjan Das, who is the Chief Justice of India, during whose tenure the Supreme Court was built, was a great fan of Uncle Fali. As a young child, I remember, I used to call Chief Justice S.R. Das Dadu. And Dadu used to take me by my hand to the Supreme Court, and we used to often sit and hear the arguments of Uncle Fali. And one day at the dinner table in Ashok Mama's house, he said, I go with Anup to listen to Fali arguing. So Mr. Sen, Ashok Sen, was quite taken aback that his father-in-law goes to the Supreme Court as the retired Chief Justice and goes only to that court where Uncle Fali used to argue. That was the great respect not only Ashok Sen had for him, but also the respect that his father-in-law, and he says, Fali is the best, you see. And I remember after I joined the legal profession, Uncle Fali introduced me to all the leaders of the Bombay Bar, starting with the first senior that he came in contact with, Marzaban Kola, who was also the president of the Bombay and the Pune Turf Club, and he was very much into horses and racing and so on. And I met him in his flat at Nariman Point, and he mentioned to me that, when Fali came from Burma with his parents, they left him in my care. And I looked after him in those days. Then I said, Mr. Marzaban, Kola, you have really brought into being so many thoroughbreds, the finest horses, and this is perhaps the greatest thoroughbred that you brought into this profession. And naturally, we all had a big laugh, and then he introduced me to Mr. Marzaban Mistry and to Mr. Vima Dalal. There were lesser personalities in those days, and Mickey Chagla was coming up as a young, bright, dynamic lawyer, and he was very fond of Mickey, who had a Parsi wife, you see. And in those days, when I used to travel to Bombay with my senior, he made it a point to have his lunch at Uncle Fali's chambers. In those days, the senior advocates in the Bombay High Court had their chambers in the High Court. And what gave a special touch to Uncle Fali's chambers was the presence of Aunt Babsy, his wife. I used to always call her Aunt Babsy, who was not only a great chef, but she used to bring some of her home-cooked stuff in a wicker basket. And she used to also serve them to us. And as a young lawyer, what could be better than getting a wonderful lunch in the chambers of the leader of the Bombay Bar? There were other chambers as well. Soli had his chamber. The two juniors, Marzaban Patrawala and Arshad Hidayatullah, and his daughter, Jia Modi, but that was much later. So there have been so many, and then we used to have this lovely food, and then the professional association started, and so many things used to happen. When I used to go for conferences, he made sure that he had a very fearsome dog called Bobo, who used to often accompany him on his walks in the Lodi garden. We often also used to walk together. So he used to keep Bobo at bay, because Bobo had this, and then once I think he bit Mr. Ravindra Narayan's foot, you see. He would sit beside Uncle Fali's feet and would snap at anyone who extended his feet into the, towards the desk, you see, and he used to sort of, and he had these very mouse-like teeth, you see, and he used to attack. So he used to keep Bobo away, and then he used to often, as I mentioned in my article yesterday, whisper in my ears, Babsy has something special for you. And then in the midst of a conference, of an intense conference, I used to go into the drawing room or the kitchen, and Aunt Babsy would serve all her, cakes and puddings and my...
So I'll just interrupt you here, sir. So there are details and details and details, and we have a time issue because everybody will speak. But tell us few of his nuggets of his legal practice. What was the core principle of his practice? How he became successful? What was his money mantra? How he treated money? I want to know all of that.
He was scrupulously honest. He was a lawyer of great integrity. He was a health freak right till the very end. He was a disciplinarian. He looked after his health and he was fit. In fact, Royington told me that he went for his evening walk even the day before he died. He was absolutely a health freak. He was very, very hardworking, meticulous. I used to remember I once went for a matter, in which I was engaged by my first client, ITC, in a Waqf board matter in Bangalore, where I remember overnight, Uncle Fali wrote out 40 or 50 pages of his arguments by hand. That was the kind of hard work he used to put in. And going back in time, I go back to a very interesting year in my life, 1985, when for the first time, Royington and I were briefed in the same matter, in an ITC matter, by two solicitor firms, Devi Dada Chandji and Company in Delhi and Crawford Bailey and Company in Mumbai. And the case was a very interesting case where ITC had copied the trademark of an American cigarette company, R.J. Reynolds. The trademark was Now. And then naturally, R.J. Reynolds came to the Delhi High Court to pass an injunction against ITC. And the chairman of ITC asked me, who do we engage in this matter? I said, it's only Mr. Nariman who can bail you out. He said, he was then at a conference in Dubai. So I was made to call him. I said, Uncle, it's a very, very urgent matter. Can you please come down immediately to Mumbai? We will meet you there. And please help my clients. And he said, I will tell you about the matter when you come. And with me, I had two instructing solicitors, Mr. Chetan Maniar, who was the top trademarks lawyer in Crawford Bailey and Company, and Ravindra Narayan. I think he was the greatest tax and excise solicitor in Delhi. They were all there. And we put up Uncle Fali in the Oberoi Hotel in a lovely suite adjoining the swimming pool. And then I was asked to open the conference, the briefing at the conference. And he said, what is this matter all about? So I explained in my own simple, way that, Uncle, what has happened is that we found this very beautiful child lying on the street. We picked him up. And then somebody else comes and tells us, no, this is our child. Give him up. So I said, your brief, Uncle, is that we want to retain the child. Please help us retain the child. We don't want to give it to its original parents. And that led to that famous R.J. Reynolds versus ITC case in the Delhi High Court, where he followed the American Home Products Principle, and he said the intention to use a trademark must be real and tangible, and we won on that ground. And Royington was beside me. It was the matter in which we were briefed in that matter. And I remember we also had a fairly elderly Sikh lawyer who was the leader of the Delhi High Court in trademark matters, Anup Singh, and he died many years ago. And Anup Singh tried to impress Fali at the first conference. We had this book, Curly's Trademarks, and he looked at that book and said, Curly Varli mujhse milne aate the. So Uncle Fali asked him, how old were you then? You see? So it was all in good humor. It was a great case. We won that case, and the other side didn't even go to the Supreme Court. There were so many.
Thank you. Sir, I'll come back to you.
One thing I must also tell you that I've also appeared in a number of matters against only one matter, where I was appearing for Manu Chabria in the Shaw Wallace matters, and Uncle Fali was appearing for Kishore Chabria, the shoe specialties matter, where my senior Ashok Mamu and Shanti Bhushanji were leading me, and Uncle Fali was leading Kishore Chabria's team. And before the hearing started, I think it was Justice Kirpal, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and I said, my lord, Mr. Sen and Mr. Nariman are on their way to the court. The battle of the giants is about to begin.
Wow, wonderful.
I remember the judge really enjoyed that, yes.
Thank you. We'll come back to you, Anup sir. Nandini, I'll come to you, and I will, by now you would have seen that we are basically celebrating his life. And what are your few of the memories? Because Sridhar, when we were talking about, he said she has to be here. So few of the things, like we have worked with you and we know that you are very meticulous and you also don't give in very easily. If you have to take out 3 to 5 essential learnings or teachings out of his life, which can motivate younger lawyers and the law students who aspire to be litigation lawyers. And I'll tell you the context. I was reading something, and I remember one of the managing partners of one of the top law firm once was a litigation lawyer, and he went to Fali sir in 94 or 95, and after half an hour, he observed him that he was sitting alone. He went and asked him. He asked him that how to become as successful as you. He said just one line, show up daily. Just make sure you show up daily. So what are your such nuggets which you'd like to share?
Thank you so much for this question. And when this interview was going on, this thing, I just jotted down certain points. I'm just going to read it because that will save our time, and then I'll elaborate.
Sure.
So first important thing he used to say, once a student of law, always a student of law. Then he also used to tell us, proficiency in English is vital. Important constitutional concepts are in English. The worst enemy of hard work is fixed monetary rewards. always used to tell us this.
Come again. Just say again.
The worst enemy of hard work is a fixed monetary reward.
Brilliant.
Then he also used to tell us important to look up even laws having remote connection with the facts of your particular case. So what we used to do previously, we had that case referencer. We used to look at 10 cases out, sometimes 15-20 cases, and only one relevant case we used to. But he used to tell us go by referencer. छोड़ो ये तुम्हारा computer, just study the referencer, and from the referencer you do your research and then come back to me. Then he used to tell us advocates' duties to bring to the court attention of all the previously decided cases which are against you also, not only in your favor but against you also. You have to tell the judge. Then most important thing which I said in the beginning also, he used to say, to lose your temper at a judge is losing half of the battle in the court. Don't shout, don't raise your voice, don't raise your volume unnecessary.
Wow. So it's good that our panelists are all here. I'll go back to Dr. Manoj first and actually ask him, because we have very few minutes left. Bose sir has so much to say, and I know he will write at least 4 more articles to bring out each aspect of his personality. He must. I promise you, Nandini, that whatever you said, Ashima will make sure that it is in 16 font in the Business World magazine. And it has your ingredient, and so that it becomes the curriculum for most of the law school, actually, that this fixed remuneration and other part is so important. People don't understand that. Dr. Kumar, we are having a very interesting take on his entire life. What do you think? You have run a first generation law firm, and now you are helping the country shape up so many things on the legal part. How did you take this calling? Because, like I said, he said my son taking up. He was one of the most busiest senior advocates when he took up as a Supreme Court judge. So, what inspiration you get from these lessons in your life? You're muted, bhai.
Yeah. Thank you. As I was mentioning in the first part of my discussion, on the professional front, of course, a lot of attributes that I picked up from him, which kind of were foundational for me personally, especially the issue about being a perfectionist. In my case, after nearly 30 years in the career, as a lawyer, founded a law firm in 2001. We were closing up on our 25th year, and one fine day, I did receive a request from the government for that my services are required there, and somewhat of a similar situation that once you're called in for public service, you have to do public service. Rest everything can be history and it can be written at some point, but the need of the hour is to contribute to public service. So here I am, and definitely as an inspiration, Fali remains at the center of most of my decision making. As a mentor, he, Dr. Madhav Menon, and Dr. Lalit Bhasin, who is still around us, very healthy and fit, and God give him a long life.
Yes.
They happen to have shaped up, and a bit of my years with Ryan, of course, Nandini would remember in defense.
Yes, sir.
I used to do my internships then when Nandini had just joined that firm. So a lot of things. One thing I want to point out about Fali, which we should have talked about a bit more, is the Fali that we ought to know a little beyond the professional side. I mean, he had a great sense of balance of, a work-life balance. He had his own passions as a photographer. He had a passion for art, for music. He was also he had a passion for cooking, and we as benefactors to his passions would get exposed to these in snips and bits and pieces off and on in over many years of our interaction. But he had a great sense of balance, and the calmness that he would bring around him wherever he was, even in the courtrooms, would not just come, without him being calm as a personality and having a sense of balance in his priorities. I think that's something that we should all take away, including young budding lawyers and those who are in mid-career and those who are in advanced career. The sooner we know how to balance and harmonize, our priorities around us, I think we can uh, somewhat live the journey that Fali has, lived and walk in some of his footsteps. It's quite an emotional day today and yesterday as well. Of course, in times to come, we'll have many more stories to share.
Ashima?
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Dr. Patra, if we could have from you as well some part of his personality that you experienced while working with him. We know, he was a conscience keeper of the courts, of the people, of the society. What else can you add to it that we can fondly remember him by?
I think he was truly in a society of shifting values and increasing binaries. I think he was a custodian of civil liberties. And I believe today in this, I'm not going to only dwell on the parliamentary side, though Sudhir
Yeah.
had said, Sasmit, you're coming parliamentary. But I'll not hold on to that. But I would rather broad base and say that, you know, if today we talk about civil liberties, we have binaries. He was a person who didn't believe in binary. He believed in the absolute of civil liberties. Some of the areas that, let's say, for example, even in the parliament, when he raised allocation for elderly persons or prohibition of contract labor or public telephones, it was always about empowerment. His entire life has been about empowering people. Even the cases that he argued, any of the cases that you look, the two judges case, the three judges case, the idea always was, how do I ensure that it doesn't stay within the confines of a specific stereotype? He was a man who didn't believe in stereotypes. See, he was like a free bird. He would kind of soar into the sky, and what he believed in, he stood by it. If it was at personal cost, yes, it was. I believe that is what was so unique about Sri Fali Nariman. And especially today, I think his life should be an inspiration for all of us to find that courage to be custodians of civil liberties. And in doing so, and that too, because I kind of traverse both sides, I can also play a little politician here as well. The fact of the matter is, many a times, as politicians, we compromise on certain things. But probably he, as a person, he's never compromised on anything. A lack of compromise is probably required today. And that is what his life tells us. What he believed in, he stood by it. All the major cases that he argued, or all the matters that he took up with the parliament, it was for the common man. It was that a common man's life, his powers, his liberties would not be squashed and pushed inside. And no power under the constitution and beyond should think otherwise. I think that, in some sense, sums up Mr. Fali S. Nariman. A courageous leader, a strong man with compassion, and a believer in the right, and had the strength to stand for the right.
Thank you, Dr. Patra, a courageous leader. We all agree. Listening to all the stories today, we'll also come back to Mr. Sridhar. Mr. Sridhar, we've heard so many things about him. Of course, he was a courageous leader. He was a very soft-spoken lawyer and a person. But in your time with him, is there an incident where you were briefing or something where he might have lost his calm or, corrected somebody? We'd love to know from you how he disciplined the lawyers around him or taught him the art of advocacy.
A person of his stature is actually, I mean, if I had to use a metaphorical reference, he's a person, is like a scientist in the midst of a big project. So therefore, their entire focus is on the job, and everything else is actually non-existent. So therefore, anything which interrupts in that process is shooed away or actually shot down. So that is the mildest way I can put it, because that's the way his conferences were. You actually distract from the proposition being discussed or the facts being referred to, then you would have a, I mean, howitzer firing at you. I mean, nothing short of that. You'll be blown to smithereens. But having said that, once he's out of that space, the transition is so calming and soothing. The simplicity of man. I mean, I can't but mention this. I mean, when I moved in full time into Supreme Court in 1999, there's a cafeteria overlooking the parking. So that's where I always felt that this is where I'm going to draw my inspiration from. All the big fancy cars from which the legends would come down from. And that's where I also learned my lessons that not necessarily big cars would mean big lawyers. They only mean expensive. They're not big. And then Fali's car was a spectacle. In peak of summer, he would be sitting in his ambassador next to the driver with the window rolled down. I mean, who does that? We try to retain the entire air conditioning and then probably borrow from the next car. And here is a man who just rolls it down, puts his arm on the window, the AC chal raha hai, and then I mean that's the kind of a man who's very blended to the natural environment. I mean that shows. I mean, as I said, this man was the simplest of a person that I could see coming in from the western part of India. I've not seen any person more simpler and then grounded than him. I mean, that's an inspirational thing for me, because in your formative years, you try to measure your success with some material yardsticks. At least he cleared that confusion in my head in no time. The way he came, the way he was walking around, and the disarming smile that he has when he greets you. I mean, how can you not actually admire him? I mean, that's a disarming, charming smile with a grin on his face, and then very affectionately speaks to you. I mean, if he passes through the library, he was there in the libraries or he's there in the lunchroom, you feel like he's one of the elder in the family who's just having some fun or fooling around with someone with a joke or something like that. He's very, very simple to access, speak to, but an amazing personality to have known him personally.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Mr. Putraju. Over to you, Mr. Mishra.
And Dr. Patra made a very important observation, and I'm telling you all here because there are very few parliamentarians who are actually practicing lawyers, and he is one of them. And I have always found that most of the articles which have come out about Fali sir, one thing is common in all of them, that how much importance he gave to grace, how graceful he was, and the big heart or kindness or whatever you call it. So one particular incident was where Abhishek Singhvi in Times of India writes today that he was allowed to open an argument way back when he was not this senior, because Fali sir was on the opposite side, but he had seen him in the matter on the opposite side in Bombay High Court on the same matter. And he tells everybody in the court, including the bench, that I will prefer, he knows the case the best, let him open the entire argument. Now, this is a very important observation, because what is happening in today's tu mame culture, whether it's a Supreme Court or whether it's different high courts, all kind of debates come out on Live Law, Business World, and other platforms. The grace is missing. The pole positions are sharpened, and giving the other person some space, and that dignity is missing. I think that is one of the reasons why this is very important, that if Anu Bose has said that, Ashok Sen has said that he'll be the last of the legend, then his message has to go on, and it has to be heard and echoed, that we go back to the same system. As Sridhar said, that he was so smiling, accommodating, and they had a very father-like approach to every youngster. Somehow that is missing. And Mr. Bose, last final 2-3 minutes to you.
Thank you very much.
What all your best teachings for the younger generation is?
One is hard
Fali
work.
sir's experience, yeah.
One is hard work, good health, and as she mentioned that
What was the secret of his good health? What was the real secret of his good health?
absolutely disciplined life, you see. Regular walks, not overeating, and even when he worked, he regulated his work hours. And the penchant for research, you see, he used to say, study case laws from all the countries, Canada, New Zealand, England, America. You see, this is, and I must mention my last meeting, of course, the last time I met him was at Ashok Desai's memorial lecture, when I just managed to speak to him. But before that, when I went to meet him at his house, I presented him a Buddha, the symbol of peace, you see. And I told him over cakes and coffee that you will live beyond 100 years. He says, why do you say so? I said, because two of my favorite English lawyers, one was a judge, Lord Denning, who lived beyond 100. And my favorite English lawyer, Sir Hartley Shockless, Lord Hartley Shockless, who was Churchill's Attorney General, lived till the age of 102, you see, and married his last wife at the age of 93, you see. So I said, Uncle, I'm sure that you will live beyond 100 years. And thirdly, Sudhir mentioned something about Rasgullas. That was not at my daughter's wedding. That was at Anayata, his daughter's post-wedding reception at the Ambassador, where Fali asked me to tell the owner of the hotel, Rajinder, Kumar, who was my dear friend, he asked him to stuff all the Bengali judges and lawyers with rasgullas, you see. In the end, I can only say that, as Rabindranath Tagore said, death is not extinguishing the light. It is putting out the lamp because the dawn has come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ashima. Over to you. You can conclude. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We've learned from all of you what a man, courageous leader, and a soft teacher he has been to all of us. In a profession like law, to not lose your calm is really something to look up to. And of course, knowing from you, we hope to carry forward all of these stories for generations to come. And thank you so much for bringing his essence to life today with all your, soft stories. And we're very sorry for the moments but are over. But thank you so much. We hope to meet you offline. Thank you all for joining us today.
You. Thanks
a lot of people have also joined us, so we'll thank them.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we remember Mr. Fali Nariman again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.